Family gatherings always had a rhythm in our house: food, noise, hugs, drinks, and then somehow, without planning it, everything would orbit around my younger sister, of Lila 29F. She doesn't force it. She doesn't demand attention. It just happens. She's the kind of person people naturally turn toward. Loud laugh, golden hair, always knows what wine to bring. Growing up, I didn't resent her for it. I was the more reserved one. Liked books, quiet routine. Lila was sparkles and sunshine. I was the one who remembered to bring napkins and double-checked if the oven was still on. My husband, Nate 36M, says I'm the kind of person people rely on without noticing. That used to be enough. 2 years ago, after 4 years of trying, I was diagnosed with unexplained infertility. Blood work, scans, tracking apps, timed everything. Nothing gave us answers. We looked into IVF. We even sat through consultations, pricing out our future and treatment cycles. But it drained us emotionally, financially. We didn't have it in us. We decided to live child-free. We had long talks, short fights, quiet mornings that felt heavier than they should, but we made peace with it, mostly. Then Lila got pregnant. First try. They weren't even trying that seriously, just seeing what happens. What happened was Isla, a baby girl. Born last month. The baby shower should have been a red flag. People acted like I was fragile glass. Conversations stopped when I walked by. Baby name talk, stroller choices, sleep training. Suddenly everyone had something to do in the kitchen when I showed up. I stuck close to Nate, gave Lila a sweet gift, and smiled through it. When Lila went into labor, I showed up at the hospital like everyone else. She'd invited us, said she wanted us there. Nate had work and came later. I arrived mid-morning, sat with my parents and Lila's husband, Sean. We waited 6 hours. Sean finally came out with tears on his face, holding his phone like a trophy. He handed it to me first. A picture of Isla, swaddled tight, pink face, tiny nose. I teared up. Everyone did. Then a nurse came and started bringing people in, 2 by 2. First my parents, then Sean's parents, then some of Lila's close friends. I stayed behind, assuming I'd be next, but I wasn't. Sean came back and said, just a little longer, with an awkward smile. I waited 2 more hours. I helped clean up snack wrappers. I walked down the hallway for coffee. I charged a phone for one of Lila's friends. Eventually, I assumed it was a miscommunication. No one had told me not to go in, just that it was crowded. I walked down the hallway, opened the door softly, and stepped in. Lila was propped up in bed, hair tied back, holding Isla. She looked up and froze for a split second. Then my mom stood up fast and came toward me, smiling too widely. She took my arm and gently led me back out into the hallway. She was calm, quiet, said she didn't want to make a scene. She just thought it might be better if I didn't hold the baby today. I laughed, confused. I thought she was joking. She wasn't. She said, "You've just been through a lot. She's brand new. Let her start in peace." I asked if something had happened. She said no, nothing specific. Just that sometimes emotions carry, energy transfers. I blinked. She added, "We don't want your sadness transferring to the baby." I stood there, completely still. I asked her, "You think I'm going to harm Isla? With what, my feelings?" She didn't say yes. She just didn't say no either. She said I'd been strong, and this was a joyful moment, and everyone just wanted the energy to stay joyful. I looked through the small glass window in the door. My dad was holding Isla. Lila was smiling at someone. A nurse was laughing at something Sean said. And I just stood there, holding a hospital visitor badge in one hand and a small wrapped gift in the other. A soft elephant toy I'd picked up weeks ago. Because Lila had said the nursery was safari-themed. Nobody asked me to leave. Nobody made me go. But I turned and walked back down the hallway anyway. Past the coffee machines, past the family lounge, through the double doors, and out into the parking lot. The sun had already set. I sat in the car for a while, watched people come and go, watched other families walk out beaming, holding balloons and diaper bags. I texted Nate to let him know I was heading home. Didn't explain why. Didn't know how to really. Later that night, I got a photo in the family group chat. Isla in Lila's arms. Sean beside them. My parents on either side. Big smiles. A perfect glossy moment. I wasn't in it. I wasn't even mentioned. The morning after the hospital, my phone buzzed with a message from my dad. It was short. He said things were tense yesterday, and that everyone's just trying to navigate emotions. That was it. No mention of what actually happened. No checking if I got home okay. No sorry. Lila didn't reach out at all. I showed Nate the message. He stared at it for a while, then said he was going to call them. I stopped him. I didn't want a confrontation. Not yet. Instead, I typed out a message in the family group chat. Just a few lines. I said I was happy for them, that Isla was beautiful, and that I needed a bit of space for now. A few minutes later, Lila responded, "Understood, that was all." No follow-up. No question. Just the heart emoji, like I was a coworker who asked to be removed from a group lunch thread. 4 days passed. No texts. No calls. Then my mom finally messaged about a casual family lunch that Sunday at their house. Said it would be nice to catch up. When I didn't respond right away, she sent a follow-up saying I didn't have to hold the baby if I didn't want to, but I was still welcome. Nate asked if I wanted to skip it. I said I'd go. That morning, I wrapped the baby blanket I'd been working on for months. Pale yellow, soft yarn, tiny elephants stitched into the corners. It was supposed to be a welcome gift. I brought it with me in a plain paper bag with tissue. When we walked in, the house smelled like garlic bread and something roasting. My dad was at the grill. My mom was tossing salad. Lila and Sean were already there. Isla in a bouncer seat near the window. I handed the blanket to Lila. She pulled back the tissue, looked at it for a second, then passed it to Sean without saying anything. He smiled, folded it, and placed it on the side table. The entire lunch revolved around Isla. Nap schedules, feeding tricks, burping methods, even her diaper brand. Everyone had advice. Everyone had jokes. I sat beside Nate, listened quietly, and ate my food. At one point, Isla started fussing. I offered to help, just gently reached out, asked if they wanted me to try burping her. My dad touched my arm and said, "Let the new parents manage. It's part of the bonding." So I leaned back. Nate placed his hand on my knee under the table. Lila didn't look at me once. Not directly. Not even while passing dishes. Every time I walked into a room, whether to grab a drink or help clear plates, the conversation dipped for a few seconds. People picked their words carefully around me, like they were scared to say the wrong thing. After lunch, I helped clean up. I took plates into the kitchen, rinsed them, loaded the dishwasher, wiped the counters. My mom came in while I was drying my hands and said, in a low voice, "Thanks for keeping it light today. It really helps when you don't make things about yourself." We drove home in silence for a few minutes. Then I told Nate, I don't think I exist in this family anymore. Not unless I pretend nothing ever happened. He didn't say anything right away, just reached for my hand. That night, I took the leftover yarn from the baby blanket and packed it away in a drawer. About 3 weeks after that awkward family lunch, I got a thick cream-colored envelope in the mail. Inside was a printed invitation for Isla's naming ceremony, light blue text, pressed floral border, RSVP card tucked neatly inside. The invite didn't say much, just the date, time, and that it would be held in my parents' backyard. No note, no message from Lila. I called my cousin Elise to check if she was going, and she said Lila had texted her directly last week. Apparently everyone else had gotten texts or calls. Nate asked if I wanted to skip it. I said I'd go. I stopped by a specialty shop that week and picked out a silver rattle engraved with Isla's initials. It was something classic and meaningful. I wrapped it in a soft blue pouch and tied it with ribbon. The ceremony was outdoors. White folding chairs set in rows under a pergola. There were wildflowers everywhere and soft instrumental music playing from a speaker. A table was set up with refreshments, cucumber water, tea cookies, tiny finger sandwiches. Everyone was in light pastel colors, the kind you see in baby-themed Instagram posts. Lila was in a soft peach dress, holding Isla, who wore a tiny flower crown. Lila's best friend Maggie stood at the front with a microphone. She welcomed everyone and gave a long, heartfelt speech about how important community is, how babies are shaped by the love around them. Then she started thanking all the aunties who'd shown up to support Isla from day one. She named 3 of Lila's friends, Emma, Kelsey, and Tasha. Each of them stood up to applause as Maggie handed them small boxes with gold chain bracelets inside. I stayed seated. When the ceremony ended, people mingled. I handed the rattle to Lila when things quieted down. She took it, looked at it for a second, said it was really nice, then placed it into her diaper bag. Later, I caught her by the drinks table and asked about the charms. She said it wasn't meant to exclude me, just that she didn't want things to feel weird. She said she didn't want me to feel like I had to pretend to be into baby stuff. I told her I was into it. I'd been excited for Isla for months. I wanted to be there, genuinely. She paused, then said, "You're not really her aunt, though. Not in the way my friends are. They've been here for everything." Then she walked off to take photos. That night, around 9 p.m., my phone buzzed. It was a photo from my dad, Isla in the little white dress she wore to the ceremony, holding the rattle I'd given her. No caption. No mention that it was from me. The next day, I got a voice message from my mom. She said the ceremony had been beautiful, and that Lila's really settled into a rhythm now. Then she added, "Try not to take things personally." I replied asking if I was doing something wrong. I asked, "Do you think I make people uncomfortable now?" She paused. Then she said, "You bring a different kind of energy now. It's not bad, it's just not light." That was it. Nothing else. I didn't respond. I just saved the voice message and then muted the group chat. After the naming ceremony, I stopped reaching out to Lila. If she messaged, I replied. If she tagged me in a photo or sent a clip of Isla gurgling in a blanket, I gave a thumbs up or a short reply. But I didn't try to start anything. A week later, my parents invited Nate and me over for a quick drop-in. My mom texted, "She's changing every day. You'll miss everything if you don't pop in." We went that Sunday afternoon. I brought a small wicker basket filled with baby clothes I'd bought months ago, still with tags. Little outfits in soft cotton, bunny prints, one with tiny suns. I placed it on the coffee table near the playmat Isla was lying on. No one touched it. My mom asked if I could help in the kitchen. I ended up rinsing bottles and sorting bottle parts from the drying rack. While I was wiping counters, I heard voices from the hallway. My mom was telling Lila, "She means well, even if she struggles." Then Lila said, "I know, but she's always had this need to insert herself into things." I stayed quiet, finished up the dishes, told Nate I wasn't feeling great, and we left 20 minutes later. 3 days after that, my cousin Elise called to ask what I was wearing to photo day. I had no idea what she was talking about. Turns out my parents were organizing a family photo shoot in the backyard, coordinated outfits, professional photographer, everyone getting pictures with Isla. Elise thought I had the info. I hadn't heard anything. I asked my mom later, just calmly. She said, "You're not being punished. This is just about comfort." When I asked whose comfort, she answered, "Lila's, and maybe Isla's too in time. We don't want early memories tied to heaviness." I asked if I'd done something inappropriate, if I'd acted in a way that made people uncomfortable. She said, "No, you've just been different." That weekend, Nate and I hosted dinner at our place. Small meal. We invited just my parents, Lila and Sean. They all RSVPs. I made roast chicken, fresh salad, baked dessert. Nate vacuumed, cleaned the patio. I set the table with cloth napkins. They didn't show. No one messaged ahead of time. At 9 p.m., my dad sent a text saying Lila had a minor scare with Isla's nap. Apparently, Isla slept a little longer than usual, and they all decided to stay home to support her. No emergency, no explanation, just silence and a canceled dinner. That night, Nate asked me, "Do you still want to be part of this? Because right now, they're asking you to disappear in a polite voice." I stopped going to every invite. No dramatic exits. No texts saying why. Just polite declines. A birthday here, a coffee there, but I let the space grow on its own. 2 weeks later, a group text came in from Lila. She asked if Nate and I could dog sit their beagle, Max, for the weekend. She said Sean had planned a surprise getaway, and they didn't want to use a kennel. Nate looked at me. I said yes, just to be kind. Friday evening, Lila showed up at our door with Max, a small overnight bag, and Isla in a carrier seat. Sean waited in the car. Lila barely looked up as she handed over the leash and gave a quick list of feeding times. Then she said, "Thanks for helping. It's hard juggling everything with a newborn." Before she turned to leave, I asked, "Do you even want me in Isla's life?" She paused for a second, blinked once, and said, "In doses. You have a complicated presence." Then she walked back to the car. The next day, a friend of mine messaged me with a story link from Instagram. She said, "Didn't know your folks had reopened the lake house." I clicked through. Bonfire photos, canoes, everyone in swimsuits and floaties. My parents smiling while holding Isla, matching shirts on Lila and her friends that said Isla's Village. They were all at the lake house I hadn't been invited to in over 4 years. The same place where we used to have July cookouts and family scavenger hunts. I waited until Monday and asked my mom why I hadn't been invited. She hesitated, then said Lila thought it might shift the energy. She said everyone was trying to keep the weekend light. I told her I'd been respectful at every event. I never caused drama. I brought gifts, helped clean, stayed quiet. She said it wasn't about what I did. It's how people feel around you, she said. Later that evening, my dad followed up with a long message about emotional balance. He said people carry weight differently, and that protecting joy wasn't about fairness, it was about emotional safety. Nate told me we should cancel the dog sitting. He said they didn't deserve our help. He asked what I was getting out of it. I said I'd keep the commitment, just this once. I returned Max Sunday night. No drama, no complaints. At the next family dinner, everything was the same. Isla in a new outfit, matching tableware, background music playing. Halfway through the meal, my mom laughed and said, "Harper's always been intense about emotional stuff, especially since the fertility thing." I smiled, picked up my purse, left early. That night, I bought a notebook and wrote down everything that was said, word for word. Date, time, who was there. I wasn't doing it to remember. I was doing it so I could stop asking myself if it really happened. The envelope looked fancy, shiny paper, wax seal, RSVP card tucked inside a vellum sleeve. It was Isla's 6-month party invite. There was a theme printed at the top in cursive halfway to one, a garden of light. A dress code was listed below, floral tones, soft pastels, no dark colors please. There was no personal message, just the date, time, and a line about catered tours Dio Ivres. Nate opened it with me and read through. He said it felt like we were being invited to watch Isla from behind the glass. I said we'd go anyway. Just to go. I spent that week putting together something I thought Lila would appreciate. I'd been saving photos from the family group chat and social media posts. I printed them out, trimmed the edges, arranged them in a handmade scrapbook, birth, first bath, sleepy yawns, baby's first laugh. I labeled every page carefully, added a few notes and dates I'd remembered from conversations. It was delicate work. The party was at a rented garden venue. There were hanging lanterns, signs that said Isla's bloom, and little name cards at each table. A drink station with mocktails. Professional photographers walking around in all black. Lila's friends were wearing light pinks, lilacs, pale greens. Everyone looked like they'd walked out of the same Pinterest board. I wore beige slacks and a white top. Nate wore a button-down. No one greeted us at the door. We made our way in and found an empty spot near the edge of the setup. I saw Lila across the lawn, posing with Isla while someone adjusted a floral headband on the baby. When I handed her the scrapbook, she gave a tight smile and flipped through the first few pages. Then she said, "Wow, that's intense. But thank you." She handed it to Sean, who placed it on a gift table with a few unopened boxes. We weren't offered seating at first. Eventually, a staff member brought over 2 folding chairs. The food was passed around by caterers. 1 drink was offered to me. People chatted in small groups. Lila's friends were in a circle with Isla, passing her back and forth like a game of trust. At one point, a woman in a pink halter dress turned to me and asked if I was the older cousin. I said I was Isla's aunt. She looked surprised and said, "Oh, I thought you were like extended family or something." I nodded and stepped away. Toward the end, I walked over to Isla's play area. She was lying on a soft blanket, looking up at the trees. I crouched down and said her name softly. Lila was nearby and walked over immediately. She adjusted Isla's hat, pulled the edge of the blanket up between me and the baby, and stood there watching. Nothing said out loud, just a quiet block. Later, Sean's sister came up to me while I was grabbing a drink. She spoke gently, almost apologetically, said Lila had been really into energy stuff lately, that she believed babies soaked up emotional vibes and atmospheres, that she was trying to curate everything around Isla with care. I asked her what that meant. She shrugged and said, "She's just really focused on keeping the environment light, like zero emotional weight." As we were leaving, my dad met us at the parking lot. He placed a hand on my shoulder and said I'd always been more sensitive than the rest of them. Maybe I could give Lila space to build the kind of world she wants for her daughter. Nate and I didn't speak on the drive home. Back at our place, I placed the scrapbook on the coffee table and sat beside it. It hadn't been touched since Lila glanced at the first page. Nate looked over and said, "They're not protecting Isla from you. They're protecting their version of joy, from being reminded that life is sometimes hard." The scrapbook stayed on the table all night, still sealed with the ribbon I had tied around it that morning. 3 weeks after Isla's 6-month party, a group message from my mom popped up on my phone. It was an invite to something she called Family Vision Day. Apparently, it was a tradition they were bringing back, an all-day planning session for holidays, shared expenses, birthdays, and family goals. This year's theme was listed right in the message: intentional boundaries and protecting joy. I almost didn't go, but Nate said if I wanted a clean line, sometimes you have to show up one last time. So we did. The event was at my parents' house. The dining table had been extended with folding sections, set with name cards. Nate and I were assigned seats at the far end, mine next to the hallway door. A printed schedule sat at every seat: icebreakers, gift budget discussion, vacation planning, emotional safety agreements. Under one session titled Clarifying Roles, I noticed bullet points like emotional safety, energy alignment, non-traditional aunt roles. I didn't say much. When I suggested rotating holiday hosting or simplifying gift exchanges, no one really responded. A few polite nods. Then back to other people's ideas. Midway through, Lila pulled out a laminated diagram labeled Isla's Circle of Influence. It had rings like a solar system: core family, godparents, trusted caregivers. My name wasn't listed, not even in the outermost ring. I asked if it was a mistake. Lila looked at the chart, then said she didn't know how to include me without making it complicated. After lunch, I pulled my mom aside in the hallway and asked if she saw me as part of the family or just someone they tolerated out of politeness. She said, "We love you, but sometimes love looks like distance. You've always brought depth to things we've tried to keep light." I asked if that's why I wasn't allowed to hold Isla at the hospital. She nodded. "We didn't want her earliest memories to carry the weight of what you've been through. Babies feel things." I went back to my seat, picked up my bag, and stood. Before walking out, I said to the whole table, loud enough for everyone to hear, "You don't have to manage my presence anymore. I'm done making people uncomfortable by existing." We drove home in silence. The next morning, I packed every gift, photo, and note I'd collected for Isla into a sealed box and placed it in storage. I didn't send a message. I didn't explain myself. I just stopped showing up. Invites came through email after that. I didn't respond. No one followed up. The last thing I heard from my dad was a single line: "We hope you're finding peace in your own rhythm." Lila never reached out. Nate and I planted a tree in our backyard that week. The one we bought years ago for a child we never had. We planted it anyway. Now when a photo or email reminder pops up, I glance at that tree and remember, I did everything I could. I just wasn't what they wanted Joy to look like.